Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hi.
Ruben Bressler.
Welcome back. It's good to be back. How's it going?
I'm feeling better. Feeling better. Yeah, feeling good. I hate missing shows. I really do. I only do it unless I absolutely have to. But we are back in action. It's time to talk about the top 10 Knights. Also talk about the top 10 Throne of Eldraine cards, the ones that we missed, because we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most elegant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Throne of Eldraine cards. Ruben?
I really liked Mark Griffith's response this week. He writes, one of my personal favorite cards from this set has given some modern control decks a tool they have desperately wanted, a cheap, flexible answer against most decks. Drown in the Lock is both a 2-drop removal and counterspell, but only if the opponent's graveyard has enough cards. Good thing Modern is centered around fetches and cheap early spells. While the card is not nearly as busted or flashy as the other cards from Eldraine, I believe it fills a role in modern control decks that has been needed for some time, and provides these decks an answer against the vast variety of decks seen in the last few years.
Yeah, Drown in the Lock in and of itself is super cool. If you don't know what it does, Drown in the Lock is a black and a blue mana here. It is a uncommon instant from Throne of Eldraine. You choose one. Counter target spell will convert a mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or destroy target creature with a converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. So this is a limited all-star. I've been having a bunch of fun in the blue-black mill deck, having a couple of these in there has been great. And it's so aggressively costed. Like, I'll be honest, like, I'm surprised we haven't seen it show up somewhere other than limited decks as of this moment. It's just so
we
good.
have. I was seeing, there was a legacy streamer who I love named Chase Hansen. He goes by Strifo. He's a big fan of these sort of Grixis piles in Legacy. And oh yeah, he was running this card. And
Nice.
why wouldn't you? You know, older formats, it's so easy to fill your graveyard without even really having to try. That's the reason why Delve is so popular. You know, you can just play fetches or just play ponders. And before you know it, you have this card that doesn't take much to get going.
The real question is Drown in the Lock going to make a impact in Pioneer? Which was
Probably.
just announced.
Although, the thing about Drown in the Lock, as was referenced in the comment, is that it's quite dependent on the fetch lands.
Right.
To sort of grow the graveyard. But if there's enough early interaction, maybe it can work.
I guess we'll see. Well, Mark, thank you so much for interacting with the show. Please try to contact Erin before she's blocking you on all social medias. She's currently on her way, so be careful.
Yeah. I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it with my mind. It's just like...
That's just how it works.
Yeah, the dream right there.
Drown in the block.
Nice. All right. So thanks so much to Cool Stuff Inc. for
Thank
sponsoring
you.
that giveaway, which we appreciate. That means we get to move on to our top 10 Knights. Now, there are times where we will sync up. You know, there's times, oftentimes it's number one. We'll have a same number one. Sometimes it's me and Aaron. Sometimes it's me and Ruben. Sometimes it's you and Aaron together. It's crazy, right? But I can't say we've had 4 sames in different slots. Like sometimes it's like the top 4 or the top 3.
Right.
What happened? I don't know.
Yeah. We were just on the same page somehow, some way this time around. It's amazing.
I have just one same, so...
Well, you share a same with one of us on one of those spots. So,
but I'm free and clear otherwise. So.
There you go.
It'll be fun. Well, let's go ahead and get this started. Ruben, what is your number 10?
Well, in addition to my sames, I have one higher, and it is my number 10, and it is on someone else's list.
Oh, wow. Aaron, what is your number 10?
My number 10 has had a rough life. You know, it's obviously by itself, it has seen some things. But when it was introduced to the Magic culture, it created all sorts of problems, and you couldn't help but feel bad for this little guy. My number 10 is Corpse Knight. So Corpse Knight is white and a black. It's a creature type zombie knight, and depending on who you ask, it's either a 2/2 or a 2/3.
Yeah.
Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. So this card was a really big deal. It was originally came out in Magic 2020, where it was a 2/3. People were announcing that they opened this card as a 2/3, right. And there were stores that were putting a hold on their pre-sales for this card, both foil and non-foil, until they could get official word from WotC as to whether or not this was intentional or whether or not it really was a 2/2. And that should have been the last that we heard of this card. However, the Brawl decks recently came out to much fanfare. One of the decks was a Knights deck, a Knights Charge deck. This card was featured in there, and we saw more reports of people opening up the Brawl decks and finding 2/3 Corpse Knights again. Only this time, there were accounts of there being also a regular Corpse Knight in these packs, and notes saying to people to use these. But this poor card, like, it didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it's dead. It's already been through enough, and now we don't know, what its power and toughness is, and so this is why it's my number. It's just
as I recall. As I understand it, the pre-release kits had the wrong power and toughness for the M20, and the Brawl decks had the wrong power and toughness, which in and of itself was awful.
Yeah, I like this one also because they didn't catch it soon enough to stop it from the printer. Catch it soon enough to put something else in saying that it's the wrong Corpse Knights. Like, they commissioned inserts.
Yeah.
To put in with the Corpse Knights that were wrong, which is amazing.
And I feel like they knew this was going to be a popular card because they made a promo of it. There's a promo like F&M version of Corpse Knight.
Right.
Okay, so...
Oh, well.
All right, so for my number 10, I wanted to make sure that if I was going to make a top 10 list, I wanted to make sure that this card was in it. This is a very important card to Magic. I'm old man Magic. I can't not talk to you about cards that were made 26, 27 years ago, because that's what I do here. So I wanted to make sure that if I were to talk about a top 10 Knights deck, and you're going to go all the way back to Alpha, White Knight is my number 10.
Oh, boy.
White Knight is 2 white mana for a 2/2 protection from black, first strike. That is what it does. It is beautiful. It is awesome. It is eloquent. It was terrific. It was exciting when I was a kid. Like, when I was like 16, 17-year-olds first finding Magic, these were sweet stats. These were actually impressive stats. Nowadays, it's like, this is common chaff you wouldn't even look at twice. But like, nowadays, it's nothing. But back then, White Knight was great. White Knight had a mirror, of course, in Black Knight. But if I was going to choose one, I played the White Weenie deck. I loved White Knight, and it definitely felt like it was in the top 10 Knights of all time. Yeah,
absolutely. White Knight is, it has seen competitive play throughout its history. We aren't going to see it played much anymore or printed much anymore because it has, of course, protection, which they try to keep a lockdown on.
They brought it back. They brought it back.
I mean, they haven't brought White Knight back since.
Well, we've also seen variations on a theme. We saw like the Knight of there were the Exalted ones, and then there were recently
Knight of Glory, I think.
Right, and then we had a recent duo Black and the White, but it was like you couldn't be targeted. It was like hexproof from Black. So they give us twists on it. I don't think this will ever really go away, but that's the OG.
Yeah. I mean, they brought protection back is what I mean, not White Knight.
Yeah.
But again, the White Knight at this point, honestly, the stats are just not really there for modern Magic creatures. And it's kind of weird to say that, but that's just kind of where we're at. All right. So let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is one of my favorite includes. Because I would never have been able to pick that this creature was a human knight. But it has won a world championship event as a 4 in Jakob Slemmer's Black 5 sort of like control deck that also featured 12 black 2-drops alongside 2 other knights that are black. But it was named Black 5 because it was supported by all 4 other colors as sort of a black control deck. But one of the reasons why this particular 4-drop or 2-drop was included as a 4 is because it was a colorless and a black. In addition to being a knight and having some relevant abilities, it was just an aggressively costed 2-drop that could also be cast off of off-color lands, and that's because it is Fallen Ascari.
Yes.
Fallen Ascari is a colorless and a black for a 2/2. It is a human knight. Apparently, after being errated, the original Visions version was just a summon knight. It can't block, and it has flanking.
Yes.
Now, Flanking, for those of you who are playing along at home, whenever a creature without flanking is assigned to block this creature, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. It's an ability that doesn't appear very much in winning lists. I think that Searing Spear Ascari probably was the most successful flanking creature I can think of. But Fallen Ascari did have its place in the sun. Certainly looks like a zombie. Doesn't look very much like a human or a knight, but here we are.
Card was, I mean, obviously I can't speak too much garbage about it because it's winning a world championship or whatever, but card was kind of trash.
It's not good.
Flanking was just really bad. Like, no one wanted to block at that point, and no one really wants to block much anyway by default. Right. So giving them the, like, this creature should not be blocked unless you're an idiot text
and
on
also, right, flanking plus also can't block.
Right.
Literally one usage, put it in the red zone, but it did it well. So
yeah,
it did it well enough. And back in the day, that's what you needed to do was 2-mana 2/2s. All right, Aaron, what's your number 9?
So when we went back to Dominaria, people were really excited by all of the callbacks. You know, we got introduced to Shauna, you know, we heard of Cisse, and, you know, people were really looking for those things because it was obvious that many characters would not be joining us this time around. And they did a really good job with the name recognition. And those of us who'd been around for a while knew, you know, we would hear a name and those alarms would go off. And a really, really big alarm went off for me when the number 9 was revealed. And I think she was one of the first pieces of art that we even saw from the set, but we didn't know who she was initially. My number 9 is Dauntless Capuchin Paragon. So Dauntless is 2 colorless and a white. She's a legendary creature, human knight, 2 power, 2 toughness, first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. Auras and equipment spells you cast cost 1 colorless to cast. So this is an ancestor of Gerard Capuchin, who is a very, very popular hero from the Magic the Gathering storyline. This immediately set up alarm bells of, oh, is she a daughter? Is she a granddaughter? Is she a niece? Who is she? And so that made you immediately want to know more about her. The character looks really, really cool. We saw some amazing cosplays on this. I don't believe she saw any standard play, but the Commander folks have had some fun with her. Obviously, that is a format where you can have a lot of auras and equipments to play with. But just a really great card, really lived up to the hype and just made you want to know more about her instantly.
Absolutely.
This is also a card that I think just in a vacuum, like this card actually very much in particular was the one where I said, wow, Dominaria is really pushing uncommons.
Yeah.
Look at all the words and abilities and things that this card does in a 3-mana 2/2. And we're just on a whole nother level. And of course, the whole set was that way. And when everything was great, nothing was too great. And man, Dominaria was amazing. Just absolutely terrific card.
Yeah, super fun. And also a relevant story part. Back when you could read the story online, Jonathas was the original Capuchin that was approached by Joyra. And then
turned her down.
She turned her down. And then Raf on the way out the door was like, wait for me. I want to go on an adventure. And that's how we got Raf Capuchin on board.
Yeah.
Nice. There you go. All right. So for my number 9, whenever we make these lists, it's always, I think, a tightrope to not be too infatuated with the new stuff and the stuff that you just got printed. And you're like, wow, this is the new hot stuff. And this is definitely going to be talked about, 5-10 years from now as one of the best knights of all time, blah, blah. So it's a little risky to pick a knight that's been printed recently, but you have to hand it to Wizards. It took them about, 15, 17-ish years since Apocalypse, where they figured out how to make a split card where one half is a spell and one half is a creature, and Murderous Writer is just a format-defining piece of removal.
Yeah.
And Murderous Writer is from Throne of Eldraine. It's 2 black and a generic mana for a rare zombie knight with lifelink. It is a 2/3 that says when it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library, but wait, it has an adventure it could go on. At instant speed, you have Swift End. For the same mana cost, 2 black and a generic mana, you may destroy target creature or planeswalker, you lose 2 life. Then exile this card. You may cast the card later from exile.
Yeah, I mean, any card, pretty much every card that has the words destroy target planeswalker on it, you can reasonably expect to talk about it for years to come. I mean, we're getting to the point now where it's much more common than it used to be, but I think that that you can still reasonably expect, especially this one, because you don't really get value quite like Murderous Writer, even on something like Hero's Downfall.
Right.
You get Ruinous Path which I think this outclasses pretty spectacularly, even though that could make a creature as well.
Yeah.
Just an amazingly good card. I'm having a ton of fun playing mono black on Arena right now. Best of 1 mono black. Just playing all of my Ayaras and Murderous Writers. And it's a ton of fun. And this card is really, really good.
It fixes itself. The 2 life that you lose, you can just get it back. I ran away with games at the pre-release just with this card. I was running a red-white Knights list. This was my only real black card, and it was a little bit of a risk to splash it, but it was like, it's so good that it is worth the splash. And there were garbage hands that I kept simply on the back of this card where it'd be like, here, destroy that, and then I'll just walk away with a 2/3 and outrace you. And a card is just amazing. The fact that you can keep recurring it if you want to. I know there's been a lot of talk of making black-green mid-range happen in Pioneer, and I think this is a card you'd absolutely want. Those black-green decks really want to grind you down. They want the game to go long, and the longer the game goes, the more likelihood you have a chance of getting multiple uses off this card.
So let's move on here to number 8. This is the first in the weird, odd, I guess.
Bizarre. We're just on the same page.
We are definitely on the same page for not only this one and the next one.
I couldn't figure out why we share
Get a room, you two,
and our 7. Like, we share it exactly. It's bizarre.
It is. I mean, I have a lot of history with this number 8. I'm sure, Ruben, you have your own take as to it.
I have a ton of history with this number 8.
We were hanging out and doing stuff back in the day when this card was played everywhere and at nationals and whatnot. So that's fun.
He said nationals.
Yeah.
There are people watching this that won't know what that is. Do you understand that?
Yep.
You see, they used to have a big tournament for all these countries, and you could go be the number 1 player in your country. Right. And then they're like, lol, Arena makes us money. And then they were done. Ruben, tell us about our number 8.
Man, this card has a lot of text on it, and it is so good. Kithkin Block was my my deck of choice, Block Kithkin. And I made 6 top 8s out of 8 tournaments with Kithkin, and a lot of it was because I main decked 4 copies of Stillman Cavalier for a long time during that, because boy howdy, is it a hell of a card. For either so there's 2 Orzhov mana, white or black, and a colorless, so 3 total. You get a Zombie Knight. It's a 2/1, and it has the following lines of text: protection from white and from black above. Pay an Orzhov mana, it gains flying till the end of the turn. Pay an Orzhov mana, it gains first strike until the end of the turn. Pay 2 Orzhov mana, it gets +1/+0 till the end of the turn. Originally a rare. Actually, only ever printed once.
$6 card.
Yeah, only printed in Eventide.
It's also a hard card to kind of reprint. You don't necessarily want this in standard.
It's true.
Not if you don't want a ton of protection.
You need a ton of protection, and you need to have hybrid mana.
This was the mirror breaker. This was the how do you stop the mono white decks, the Kithkin decks? How do you answer certain things in that format? Stillman was there.
Yeah, the decks that were popular were fairies, far and away fairies, and most of their removal was black. Then Kithkin existed, and all of their cards were white. Mm-hmm. And then there was a black-based sort of mid-range-ish control deck, and a lot of their removal was black as well. Obviously, this thing loses to red removal, but red removal was almost nowhere to be seen in that sort of time span. It's also we figured out that the best way to fight against Stillman Cavalier was to have Moonglove Extract in the sideboard. And so we figured out Moonglove Extract about 2 weeks early, and that took me to a couple of top 8s as well. Stillman Cavalier, I think, still has an avenue back into the modern metagame if the Abzan decks pick back up in popularity, as opposed to decks trying to use Lightning Bolt. This thing has protection from Abrupt Decay, from Path to Exile, from a lot of the, from Tragic Slip, from Fatal Push. A lot of the cheap removal that gets used in those decks, if they're not using red to be able to interact with it, this I think could come back if the recipe is right in Modern.
I feel like I've seen this in some cubes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is one of the best Orzhov cards ever made, and my favorite is that this one was 100% under the radar. No one thought when this thing was spoiled, oh my god, the metagame has been redefined. They're like, no, this card's crap. Don't be playing this. And then later it was like, wait a minute, this card
I love when that happens.
Literally perfect to fight these decks, and that was fantastic. I love that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Aaron, what is your number 8?
So I talked about name recognition that came along with Dominaria, and we had Cisse, we had Capuchin, but there was name recognition that meant a lot to me, and that was the last name of Vess. And so when I saw this card, I was immediately hooked by the name, and the card just kept getting better and better. And it was everything I love. It was dead things. It was black. It was over the top. It just was right up my alley. My number 8 is Josu Vess, Lich Knights. So Josu Vess is 2 colorless and 2 black. He's a legendary creature, Zombie Knight, with kicker 5 and a black. You may pay an additional 5 and a black as you cast the spell. So by itself, it's a 4/5 with menace, which is fine. If you pay the kicker for a whopping 10 mana, when Josu Vess Lich Knight enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 8 2/2 black zombie knight creature tokens with menace. Good God, I could not believe this card. So in the storyline, this is Liliana's brother. This was a character that sort of him dying kind of paved the way for her to become the Liliana that we know. She started off as being a healer, and she had tried to save him. And the remedy that she tried to use to save him ended up turning him into an undead. And so that was sort of her first taste of this dark power that she had, of kind of wanting these dark things. And she abandons him and kind of goes on her journeys, and he becomes a Lich Knight in the process, a very powerful creature on Dominaria, and she has to kind of reckon with that. And she ends up putting him out of his misery eventually. But it's just an amazing, like even the armor is just gaudy, and nothing subtle about this card. You look at the banner, the horse even, like just everything about this card just grabbed me, and I just wanted to live the dream of just not just have a zombie, a 2/2 shambling, whatever, a knight with menace. Let's do this. I love it.
Yeah.
The beauty of Dominaria's design is that this reads like an unstoppable monster.
Yeah.
And in the format, it's good. Mm-hmm. It's not an unstoppable monster. It's fine because Blood Tallow Candle, amongst other things, can just kill it. And that's part of why Dominaria was so good, was you have these cards that are cool, awesome, resonant. They do something really sweet and powerful, but they're not unbelievably unstoppable monsters.
There are answers to all of the rares and mythics at common. They're just very specific answers. Yeah, yes. I mean, can't say good things about.
I rarely saw any complaints about people's inability to deal with things in the limited format. Everyone felt really well equipped to deal with the Ivra, the Halcyon, whatever, the Lyra, whatever it was going on. That was one thing I think the format did very, very well, was you felt like you could deal with anything.
Exactly. Everybody had answers, which was great. All right, let's move on here to number 7, which me and Ruben also.
I don't know how we did this, but look, so this one, there's at least a context clue that suggests to me why we both have it at number 7.
Okay.
Which is that this card has level up, and its final level is 7+.
Not why I put it
no,
number 7.
Not why you put it here.
Well, I don't know about.
Go ahead.
I don't know how your all's methods work. Okay, my method is usually, whatever we've defined as the criteria. I tried to get that search result and/or pages on those things in tabs or whatever, and then I have a spreadsheet, and I'll put down every single card that I think fits the criteria that I like for that thing, and then I'll work backwards. I'll say, what's my number 1 with a bullet? What's my number 2? What's my number 3? Blah blah blah. What do I want to make sure is in the top 5? That's a big thing for me as well. And then I go, okay, how much do I feel are they important in the remaining list? And for whatever reason, our number 7 happens to be exactly Student of Warfare from Rise of the Eldrazi. I love the level up mechanic. I absolutely love it. I wish they would return to it. I don't know what they're waiting on. I think it's brilliant. They can do a ton with it. Level up, level up by sacrificing creatures, level up by sacrificing permanents. So much design space open in this thing. Student of Warfare is 1 white mana, and I, enjoy me a white weenie all-star. For 1 white mana, it is a rare human knight with level up of a white mana, which means white : put a level counter on this, level up only as a sorcery. When it has 2 to 6 level up counters, it is a 3/3 first striker, no longer just a 1/1. And when it is level 7 or above, it is a 4/4 double striker, which means in one card, just pour that mana in. You don't have to put more permanents on the board. Just this one thing has to be killed or you're going to die to it. And I loved it. I loved it with the way it played. I appreciate the fact that it was, You know, like Rise of the Eldrazi was supposed to be battle cruiser Magic, but not everybody plays Emrakul. You can play this one dude and just make it your battle cruiser as you pour more and more mana into it.
Yeah, Student of Warfare is still to this day in most cubes. It won a Pro Tour in the hands of one Mr. Paul Rietzel, not just your average white weenie specialist at Pro Tour Amsterdam in 2010, in a format that was supposed to be not a white weenie format. This was a format that Craig Wesco famously did not play white weenie. But Paul Rietzel was able to get there with 4 copies of Student of Warfare. Fighting alongside the best white creatures that you could muster. Just an insanely powerful card. I don't think that Level Up is ever going to come back.
But why?
It is a horrifically unresonant ability.
It's pretty ugly.
The text box is really difficult.
I just don't associate it with Magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when I
it
think of
feels
Level
like
Up,
a Yu-Gi-Oh card,
right? When I think of Level Up,
card.
I think of like a Final Fantasy game, or I think of a level in terms of like a Mario game, like a level being a setting that you need to conquer, or it just screams more video game to me. It screams more computer game. I just don't.
I get that, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's kind of like Drive took me out of Magic. Like I just felt like
vehicles,
Crew, where I was just like Crew. Like I think
Crew
of NASCAR.
At least works
I think
for
of
ships. And for carriages.
But even then, it just felt like there was just a disconnect there, where it was like, yeah.
Okay. What is your number 7, Aaron?
So my number 7 is a character that they had built up in the Ixalan storyline. We had these vampire conquistadors. They were sort of living or unliving, if you will, for this creature, this queen, this icon. And when you finally meet her in the last story, she's nothing like you expect. And she basically just smacks them for not doing what she wanted them to do, which I thought was glorious. I literally howled. My number 7 was Olinda the Dusk Rose. So Olinda is from Rivals of Ixalan. She's 2 colorless, a white and a black, legendary creature type vampire knight, 1 power, 1 toughness with lifelink. Whenever a creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Olinda the Dusk Rose. When she dies, create X/1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Olinda's power. I like to say that she's like a vampire pinata. Like if you just bust her open, little vampires come out. But the art on this is gorgeous. Like if you look at Chris Ron, his ability to do like the skin and the hair is magnificent. But what I love the most is that these conquistadors are supposedly doing all of these shenanigans. And then when they finally awaken her, she's, that's not and she basically just backhands them all, like wasting their immortality, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And the card is just really good. You know, it was predicted to do a little bit in standard. It didn't really, if I remember correctly. But she's still a $9 card. So someone's using her in Commander. They gotta be. With Frontier, with Pioneer now, there's a possibility she might get some new life. But the card is just glorious. And I just love sort of the turnabout of, you know, doing something in a character's name and then you realize that wasn't even what they wanted.
Yeah, this is a card that exploded when the Orzhov and the Return to Ravnica were looking to be sort of the aristocrats type style, and maybe this was going to be the piece that kind of tied it all together, but they kind of crippled that deck just enough to where it wasn't really competitively viable, so It became a really interesting sort of tool for casual decks, which is really fun. Definitely was on my short list. I think Olinda is really, really cool. Interesting. I think there's a power level here that even at Mythic, I think they were a little safe on, because they didn't want this thing to kind of go completely insane. I think this is a card that if it's too good, it's going to be a serious problem.
Sure.
So you'd rather err on...
I've seen it do some dumb things. Like, it's great.
So think about what it does in formats with Soul Rings, and then think about if it was like 3 mana or 2 mana instead of 4 mana.
Or even just good sack outlets, or just, you know, the ability to put counters on her anyways. The counters don't have to come from her ability. If you can put counters on it from anything, she gets bigger, and then you're dealing with these things with lifelink, no less. That could really, really change the game.
Yeah, just think this little, you know, the spider colonies just...
No.
Great. Now, thanks for that bespoke nightmare.
Nightmare fuel provided by me. All right, we're here to number 6. Ruben, what's number 6?
I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that this is only on my list, it seems. This is, I mean, I had a difficult time not putting this in my top 5. It has been printed twice, first in Shards of Alara, later in Magic Origins, and won either a Pro Tour or a World Championship both times it was printed. It's been super popular in a number of different types of decks. It is just an incredibly powerful card, from Bant Humans to White Weenie to everything in between. It is Knight of the White Orchid. So for white, you get a 2/2 Human Knight with first strike. When Knight of the White Orchid enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a Plains card. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Once again, Paul Rietzel, White Weenie Master, but also Brian Brown-Duin won gold with this in his deck, in his Bant Humans deck at the 2016 World Championships. Been extremely popular, extremely powerful card. Just a great, I mean, this is not an effect that you usually get in white. Being able, every once in a while, you'll get a Tithe style effect where you can get a Plains out of your deck, or a Weathered Wayfarer. This is the most aggressive we've ever seen it. Being a 2/2 first striker that can ramp you. If you go play this on turn 3, essentially, before you play your land drop for the turn, you can get ahead of your opponent. It's just a really, really good card.
Oh, this was definitely on my short list. This is one of the most powerful Knights ever printed. Like, this is one of those sort of watershed cards that when it came out in Shards of Alara, you're like, whoa, really? I could just play this and get land and like be on parity and no longer be behind. And that's always a really big issue with the aggro decks, to always be falling behind. Printed in Shards of Alara and came back at Magic Origins and was still sweet. It didn't do quite as much, I think, that it did the second time around, but the first time around, it was a monster.
Still, I mean, it's still quite good.
Yeah.
I had it in I was working on an Oketra, the God Eternal Oketra deck, which I called Bouncy Castle, because she would just bounce her white creatures. And this was definitely effect worth bouncing, where it's like, oh, there's a land. Like, I'm just always going to have a land. This is fine.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrific and very powerful, very sweet. Aaron, what's number 6?
This is a card that recently came out in Throne of Eldraine and got a lot of people excited right off the bat, if not a little confused, because there's a lot to take in on this card. So let me go ahead and walk you through it. It's very on brand for me. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do with it, but I'm sure I'll think of something. My number 6 is Sir Conrad the Grim.
Yep.
So Sir Conrad the Grim is 3 colorless and 2 black. He's a human knight with 5 power and 4 toughness. Buckle up, kids, because it's going to get rocky. Whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can pay 1 and a black with a colon, so it's an activated ability. Each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Woo! So I think I want to put this in my She-Ray deck, because if I'm reading this correctly, so I'll get the triggers when things die, and then when they come back from the graveyard, they'll be like, whoop, 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 whoop. I think I can have a really, really good time with this. So this is a card I'm really excited about. There's been some talk about mono black aristocrats in Standard. Obviously with Pioneer now, that could very well be a thing. Any sort of aristocrat deck, I would think this would have a home in it. The EDH players snapped this thing up. I remember Commander's Quarters, one of my favorite video channels, did a deck tech for this as well. And so very exciting card. I don't know what I want to do with it, but I think I'll do something and it'll be a really good time.
Whenever you have an ability that is free, free is always scary in Magic. I don't care what hoop you have to jump through to get the free. Usually the free is busted when the free starts going off and you're like, wait a minute, that was for free? You didn't pay any mana to like hit me a bunch of times because you milled some creatures? Like, what? You wrath the board, a bunch of damage comes your way? Like, this card is dope. One of the best limited uncommons in the format for Throne of Eldraine, and definitely a card that just screams, I'm scary.
It just covers so many bases, because normally with aristocrat decks or just any sort of triggers like that, there's just one way to do it, where it's just death. But this is like, you can mill and do this. You can reanimate things and do this. If you pair it with a cauldron, for example, it's not just that. Whereas the aristocrats decks tend to do one thing really, really well. But if they're not doing that thing, they tend to suffer. And there's just so many ways to get this thing going that it's very rare that it's not going to be doing something. And it's just a 5/4.
And it's a 5/4. Exactly right. Most of your blood artists are You can sneeze on them and they die.
Yeah.
This is a blood artist that, oh, by the way, if you're just mana flooded, it fuels itself.
Here's a 5/4, yeah.
Like
yeah,
maximum,
and it's also a 5/4.
Maximum 2019 Magic is that last ability.
Yeah.
It does this incredible paragraph of stuff, and then it says, and here's your ability to turn it on if you don't have anything else going on.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
very similar to the red Sir uncommon as well, with the ability to turn itself on. Yeah. This is a heck of a Magic card.
Heck of a Magic card. So while we're talking about recent Magic cards and their power level, this is another one of those that was recently printed, and I was just head over heels in love with it. And I loved it from the moment I saw it. I knew it was going to be a 4-man all-star. People were like trying to crap on it sometimes, particularly when it first came out. And I'm like, are you insane? This card does actually freaking everything. And at the time, worked perfectly with the Dauntless Vanguard, and now just works perfectly to beat your head in, which is Knight of the Ebon Legion. One of the best one-drops of all time. And I mean, of all time, for real. Knight of the Ebon Legion is 1 black mana for a rare vampire knight from M20. It's a 1/2, and it has a few abilities. The first one is a black and 2 generic mana : it gets +3/+3 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. So that is a 4/5 Death Toucher for 3 mana activated. And again, you can activate that ability as many times as you want. At the beginning of your end step, if a player, not your opponent, if a player lost 4 or more life, which could include yourself, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yep. That's what it does.
Which is what Dauntless Vanguard would do on turn 2 most of the time.
Correct.
You can even be that player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would go Knight, and then next turn you go Dauntless Vanguard, pay 4 life, attack for 1, get the counter though, because my life doesn't matter against Thought Erasure and Teferi that deck.
This card is bananas. Like, this card is actual factual. It turns itself on.
It's ridiculous.
It works for both players. It's not just your opponent. Like, this thing is a 1-man like beating machine. You don't have to play anything else. You just play this and just keep pumping it until they kill it. They gotta kill it.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Card is a 1-man army.
Yeah, plays well with the Knight synergies, which can make it bigger with the Crusade effects, and it's a vampire if you do any sort of vampire shenanigans.
It's a 1/2 for whatever reason, so it can block your Scorch Spitters if you really if you need to in a pinch.
Jeez,
the card just it slices, it dices, it makes fries. Let's go on here to number 5. Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is, I think it's my most recent. Yeah, I think it's by far my most recent card. This is my only Dominaria entry on the list. And Andrew Ellenbogen won Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica with a Boros aggro strategy. We call it Boros aggro, but it was really a white weenie deck that was bolstered by a couple of knights, in addition to those vampires and soldiers that we've grown to know and love. In addition to honorable mention knight History of Benalia, which I did not include on my list, even though I could have, because I've done stupid crap like that in the past. But one of the knights that appeared in that deck was, I believe, as the story goes, designed by Richard Garfield himself as a bit of a nod and a bit of a flavor win of how a bodyguard is supposed to work. And so Dauntless Bodyguard is my number 5. Dauntless Bodyguard is a 2/1 for 1 white mana. It's an uncommon from Dominaria, and it is a human knight. As Dauntless Bodyguard enters the battlefield, choose another creature you control. Sacrifice Dauntless Bodyguard. The chosen creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Just a very flavorful ability. Gives you, Whitney Houston or Paul Simon vibes, depending on your musical inclination. Beautiful art. Really evocative of what a bodyguard is supposed to do. Just a home run win all the way around.
Yeah, this card is absolutely terrific. I love me a Savannah Lines more than any other player. Yep. And this is one of the best Savannah Lines ever made. And is absolutely terrific for what it does, for its cost. On turn 1, it's great. On turn 7, it's usually useful in some way, which makes it a truly exceptional card. All right, so Aaron, what's number 5?
I hate losing to burn decks. If I ever have to decide what deck I'm going to play for a tournament, that is my criteria. One, it's got to be a little bit broken. It's got to have a little bit of stank to it. You know, it's got to be a little nasty. But also, I will not lose to burn. I cannot play a deck that has a bad burn matchup. I won't do it. Dredge ad nauseum. It's not happening. Same goes with standard. Usually, there's a mono red deck in standard, and I want to make sure that if I'm playing a deck, it can handle mono red or burn strategies. And my number 5 did an amazing job of that when it was standard legal. It was usually just a sideboard card, but if you would bring it in, it was a huge stopgap against these mono red decks in the format in a very clever way too, not in the ways that you might think of. My number 5 is Fiendslayer Paladin. So Fiendslayer Paladin is 1 colorless and 2 white. It's a creature type human knight with 2 power and 2 toughness, first strike and lifelink. I'm not done. Fiendslayer Paladin can't be the target of black or red spells your opponents control. So, you know, odds are if you're playing a red deck, your creatures aren't very big. And if you have first strike, bam, you get to hit first and gain some life while you're at it. Mm-hmm. And they can't target it with burn spells because it has protection from that. And so I love this card so much. It felt really good to sort of board these in and just, whoop, here's my stopgap. Just durdle, buy some time for me, and then I'll slam an Obs it out and laugh at you. It's fine. And so this card brought me a lot of joy. It's everything I look for in a card like this. And if I have to play white, this is exactly what I want my white cards to do.
It's got a lightsaber. It's a freaking...
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
The most common home for Fiendslayer Paladin when it was in standard was actually Bant Hexproof. Because it avoided all of the good removal at the time, things like Lightning Bolt and Doomblade, and you could just slam all of your auras on it, just like it was.
I was playing Esper Control,
just like it was an Invisible Stalker or a Gladecover Scout or a Geist of Saint Trapped, and you'd still be fine. Put a Rancor on your Fiendslayer Paladin and go to town.
Yes,
but yeah, I mean, this thing saw a bunch of play when it was in standard, and was sort of their version of protection that they wanted to fix, but still made it quite powerful.
Yeah, that card was super exciting when it came out, and it kind of sort of harkened back to older Knights that we may talk about later. Mm-hmm. But either way, it was. I just love the artwork. I think the artwork is just some of the best. Well, on that same wavelength, Ruben, same number 8. Ruben,
yes.
Same number 7. Number 5, we both chose a card from Dominaria.
Yeah.
We were just a little bit off on what it was.
Yeah, if you say the card I think you're going to say, then we could have had 5 number 5s. Five sames.
5 sames. My number 5 is a very powerful Crusade variant.
Yeah, we were very close.
One of the triple color cards in that cycle for Dominaria. Banalish Marshal is 3 white mana for a 3/3 rare human knight that just says other creatures you control get +1/+1. That is the Crusade effect. That is exactly what the white weenie deck needed, the aggro deck needed, and was a terrific, honestly, a standard all-star from the moment he showed up to the moment he rotated out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The card was insane. Very close to making my list, as I mentioned. That whole cycle saw play.
Tempest Djinn.
Yeah, Tempest Djinn was a standard
the
all-star.
mono blue crappers deck.
Yeah,
I don't think the black one did.
Yeah, the black one was not popular.
No,
unfortunately,
it's crazy that it wasn't
the only whiff.
Did the red one?
Yeah,
Goblin Chain
Roller?
Oh yeah. Sorry. So you can tell I play red decks, so I tried to pretend it didn't exist.
Right.
It was like,
and even Steel Leaf Paladin saw play.
The black one really.
What a home run of a cycle! And this card, of course, is spectacular.
Yeah, but Banalish Marshal is terrific. Let's move on here to number 4. We have the same number 4.
Yep, and I know how we did this time too. Because
feeling like the third wheel here.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that Evan doesn't seem to think that the subconscious context clues have anything to do with us choosing the same cards. He did not like my explanation of why we chose the same number 7, because it had the number 7 on it. Our number 4 costs 4 mana and has 4 times. I think that it's this. I think that that's he just doesn't recognize within himself that he is being subconsciously led towards certain spots in the list. But that is certainly, I'm certainly willing to accept that my number 4 is a 4-drop knight.
Look, Hero of Bladehold showed up in Mirrodin Besieged.
Yep.
And this This was just like, you know, right around Mirrored and Besieged was like, as we got on this kind of rocket ride of creatures are going to be seriously sweet now, and you need to recognize that with new Phyrexia coming, and we previously had Scars of Mirrodin, where we had things like Wormcoil Engine and stuff, like, you know, the brakes are off, and we're going to do this. And Hero of Bladehold was a mythic in Mirrored and Besieged. 2 white, 2 generic mana for a 3/4 mythic human knight. Has Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And whenever Hero of Bladehold attacks, you put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So you stack it to where you get the 2 1/1 white creature tokens, and Battle Cry shows up, and now they're 2/1s.
This card is terrifying. This is a card that you have to kill on site. Even in EDH, I was at a party the other day with our friend Joe, our friend and patron Joe. He was playing a Jazal Goldmane deck that had this card in it and Mirror Entity. And so he would just, yeah. And so this card's attacking, you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
But you don't even have to do all of that, even on its surface, even just as it is. This is the definition of an army in a can. I mean, this card is terrifying.
It kills in 2 swings, usually. I mean, you attack for 7 the first time you attack with it, and then the next time it's 11, and usually you've dealt 2 damage by that point. So, you know, this card is just gosh darn terrifying.
Right. This was the, you know, you need to answer this. Hero of Oxid Ridge was cute, but Hero of Bladehold brought the truth and ran that format as sort of the anti-Callblade stuff.
Yeah.
At the time. All right, Aaron, what is your number 4?
You know, card deals really, really well with Hero Bladehold.
What's that?
My number 4. So my number 4 brought me 4. Yeah. My number 4 brought me an incredible amount of joy. You may not know this, but my first ever standard deck was Mono Black Infect when I came back to the game. And it was janky as hell. I was running Phyrexian Vat Mother. I was running Hand of the Praetors.
As you do.
I had Plague Stinger. I loved it. I didn't win very much, but I had a lot of fun with it. And my number 4 was an all-star in my deck because humans was really big. You know, we were in an Innistrad standard, Avacyn Restored. There was a humans deck. I think it was red. There was white. And my deck, this card just laughed at it. And there were so many times I would just suit this baby up and have a really, really good time. I was truly sad when this card rotated, and I need no excuse to use this card. My number 4 is Phyrexian Crusader.
Nice.
So Phyrexian Crusader is 1 colorless and 2 black. It's a creature type zombie knight, 2 power, 2 toughness. First strike, pro red, pro white. With Infect. Now think about how First Strike and Infect works. So you do your 2 damage first, slap 2 -1/-1s on them, and you could probably just bump them off at that point. Like, this thing is an incredible ability to deal with other things. It sometimes sees sideboard play in Modern because everyone's running Bolts and Paths. And so if you just play this, how you going to deal with that? And so I have just done dumb things with this card. I love the art. It reminds me of sort of that Ron Spencer kind of gruesome black, you know, very shiny. I love this card so much. And if you ever tell me, Aaron, we're playing a deck with Crusader, I'm just going to do it. I don't need an explanation. I'm in.
There was a minute there where it was super popular in Standard, and even in Modern, it had a second where Black Infect was popular. And I wouldn't be surprised if it reared its ugly head once again.
Yes.
Yes, this was the mirror of Mirren Crusader. The Mirren version would be double strike protection from black.
I don't know her.
But you don't know her. What we do know is Phyrexian Crusader. Also only printed once.
Yes.
Whereas Mirren Crusader got a reprint in Modern Masters 2015. Phyrexian Crusader not so much.
Because she's common.
That's right. Basic, as it were. Ain't got that Infect goodness like
still a $6 card. The original still a $6 card. Like, I love my Infects like my heart. I like it black. Just
and the Phyrexians live up to their name. They're terrifying.
Yes.
And I've seen this thing in cubes. Like, this is still one of those sort of scalpels that if you play against a mono red deck or a mono white deck or red white Jeskai, whatever BS, you're like, okay. We're done with all this nonsense.
Right.
I love it.
All right. We want to hear to number 3. Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is another card that has seen a ton of Standard play. Not only did it win a Pro Tour in the Aristocrats, but it has been in a number of different decks across a wide variety of strategies. It's a mono white knight that has been played in the Celestia decks, in blue white decks, in Bant hexproof decks. aristocrats, like I mentioned, Abzan decks, all across the various spectrums. Really, you want to be playing it alongside aggressive 2-drops, because when you drop Silverblade Paladin on turn 3, you can give them both double strike. Silverblade Paladin is a colorless, a white, and a white for a 2/2 human knight with Soul Bond. You may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when it enters the battlefield. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. As long as Silverblade Paladin is paired with another creature, both creatures have double strike. Just a huge, huge game-breaking card, particularly alongside of Falkenrath Aristocrat in that Tom Martell Aristocrat strategy, to be able to swing in the air for 8, even if the rest of the board is mostly clear. Really good with the Bant Hexproof stuff as well, because you could put Spectral Flight or Rancor on any of your creatures that happen to have double strike at the time. It's good on turn 3 when you pair it with your 2-drop. It's good later in the game when you need to have something else drawn off the top. Just a really powerful, amazing card.
It was very good. I recall, because this to me, in terms of like the way that I saw and the way I played it, was I always played it in cube, because I wanted this to work in cube draft. And I've still seen this in cubes, and it's not unheard of or anything. But I had a very difficult time sort of making this card work the way that I think you wanted to, like the way that you were describing. You're just like, oh man, on turn 3, here with your 2-drop, and sweet. And I could never kind of get that thing going the way that I want.
You're gonna have to. It's probably not good enough for cube anymore, but it probably was for a while.
Back in the day.
I mean, double strike is a hell of an ability, particularly on a 3-power creature on turn 2 or something.
This is one of those cards that is powerful without even having to try. We talk about some cards that are just so good where, you can live the dream and attach it to like a Wolver Silverheart, or you can still attach it to just, I don't know, just whatever's out there, and it's fine.
Just put it next
you'll
to
still take
it.
And so I think that's the sign of a card when it really doesn't matter, how hard you go with it. It's still just fine.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
All right.
Not gonna lie.
That's just because you couldn't make it work.
I could.
Don't blame the card. The card itself has a ton of history, a ton of top finishes.
And it's always terrifying, being on the other side of it. When you see a board full of creatures, you're like, first you're gasping when it hits.
Right.
And then you're like, what are you bonding it with? And you're just waiting for them to choose, and you're like,
waiting for the other shoe to drop,
right?
Yeah.
You're kind of going it over, like, I can handle it if you choose that. I can handle it. I don't want you to choose that. And you're just like, the suspense.
Then they'll blink it, and then like you can't pair it.
Sure. Mr. Magical Christmas Land can't figure out the way that the double strike Soulbond card.
I'm sorry. Your pick is trash. Okay, thank you. Aaron, what's your number 3?
I had to pick something that was very on brand for me. I've covered a couple of things that are very on brand for me with Olinda and Sir Conrad, but we're going to go all the way into the nonsense here. This card is wild. It is everything I want to be doing, and nothing makes me happier than when this card sees competitive play. It's $15 for some reason. My number 3 is Hakan Strongle's.
Yeah. Hakan is
so
dope.
Dumb. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep it together. So Hakan is one. I got the broken giggles. I'm sorry. So Hakan is 1 colorless and 2 black. YouTube's gonna be so mad at me. Legendary creature, Zombie Knight, 3 power, 3 toughness. You may play Hakan from your graveyard, but nowhere else. Yep. So you have to find a way to get it in the graveyard, which is not that hard. As long as it's in play, you can play night cards from your graveyard. So everybody, your list, Ruben's list, I'll play them all as long as they're in there. That is awesome. When it's put into a graveyard from play, I lose 2 life, which is fine. I love when this card sees play. There was a deck that was going around Modern for like a minute with the Changeling cards. Yeah. And you would just loop Nameless Inversions because it's a night.
Nameless Inversions and Crib Swaps as far as the eye can see.
It was so stupid. And so this card is just so random. I love cards that kind of break the game, change the game. The fact that you can only play it from the graveyard, the hoops you have to jump through to get this to work, the deck building restrictions, it just makes me so damn happy. And when I was going through the list, I was like, it needs to be here.
Yeah.
What little I could find is it was in a Death Cloud deck in the top 8 of a PTQ.
Sure.
Because sure.
Because you discard it to the death card.
It dies. You just play it right back.
was never quite good enough.
No.
But it was super unique, super fun, and it is definitely the kind of card that should give you the broken.
It's a $15 card from Cold Snap.
Because it's been printed exactly one time, and they just made a bunch of really cool knights.
Oh my god!
And that's why, which is absurd. All right, so my number 3 is it was an all-star, was a card that I think many people kind of looked over and was like, okay, that's really cute. It came from the set where there were first time we'd ever seen mythic rares, so we didn't really know how to evaluate them and whatnot. But what we got was a 3-color legend that redefined what green, white, and blue do. Rafik of the Many is my choice. It is a blue, white, and green generic mana for a 3/3 mythic legendary human knight with Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, he says, it gains double strike until end of turn. So enter the mythic deck with Baneslayer Angels and Lotus Cobras and all sorts of crazy silliness. And what was it? Something of the Sovereigns of Lost Alara?
Sovereigns of Lost Alara with Eldrazi Conscription.
Right.
Also, Finest Hour, which when you attacked alone, got another combat step. So you had quadruple strike with your twice Exalted.
Yeah, it was absolutely silly. I mean, even if you Elspeth would just jump a guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rafik would turn into a 4/4 double striker in the air, and that's just enough. Well, not God, he would turn into a 5/5, wouldn't he? Double striker in the air, because Exalted. Oh my goodness, yeah, this card was absolutely terrific. Is a sweet card that was also included from the Vault Legends. Is definitely an EDH All Star, and I think the artwork is also just fantastic.
Yeah, really iconic Bant commander.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on here to my number 2, because we talked earlier about Fiend Slayer Paladin. Well, look. I'm old man Magic. All right. I'm not going to
Did they give you a cane when you were in the ER the other night?
Just a special one. Yeah. I would rattle it, and that's when they would know it was great.
Y'all.
Hey, y'all. Need some meds.
Keep it next to you.
Won't you get you that needle over there and put it in the butt.
Wow.
Kaboot. That's where you put in the thigh.
I understand.
Put in the thigh.
I understand.
All right. All I'm saying is, Old Man Magic is not going to choose Fiend Slayer Paladin. Old Man Magic lived through Wildfire, okay? Old Man Magic lived through Umazawa's Jit, all right? Old Man Magic said, look, when you're looking for a 2-white generic mana knight, the dude's name is Paladin Onvek, and you get it right. You don't besmirch. Don't be besmirching. Besmirching?
Besmirching.
Besmirching is fine.
Get you besmirched on. Now look. Paladin Onvek is a great Magic card. 2 white and a generic mana for a 2/2 rare human knight. It has first strike, protection from black, and protection from red. And that was a gigantic card back in its day. It was really important. The first strike mattered, the pro-red mattered, the pro-black mattered. Everything mattered when it was the most important thing. Around Champions of Kamigawa Standard, when we had Mortivores. Not Mortivore, we had... what was that card? Magnivore, thank you. And Wildfire going crazy. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. It carried equipment very well, obviously. Carried a GT very well. But even before that, when it was originally printed back, I think, in Stronghold, it saw play.
Exodus.
It got reprinted. Oh, Exodus. It got reprinted a couple of times and was always playable. 2 relevant protections and first strike, even on a 2/2 for 3 mana, usually good enough. If you can dodge Doomblade and you can dodge Lightning Bolt, you can have a seat at the table.
Right. I mean, Umazawa Jite was that they needed to have a mirror breaker, and this was the one because you could use first strike before they did, which was huge. It came to us in Exodus, but showed back up in 9th edition, which was when it was very important. 10th edition, not so much. And then Wizards was like, we're cool on the protection stuff.
On the protection. We don't want to stonewall the 10/10 Magnivores anymore, so we'll give you Fiendslayer Paladin instead.
Right. Which is kind of what you got. So, Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2, we referenced earlier. My number 2 is a 2/2. My number 2 has double strike, protection from black, and protection from green. Aaron doesn't know her. It's Mirren Crusader.
Nice.
I hate this card.
Mirren Crusader is a colorless, a white, and a white for a human knight. It has that Mirren watermark like the other, like a Hero Bladehold did. So 2 of my top 4 are Mirrens fighting for Mirrodin Pure. Double strike, protection from black, protection from green. Sees play in a gazillion decks. From standard to all the way back to legacy death and taxes. This is the thing that carries your equipment in death and taxes. You sneak it in off of an Aether Vial, and then you hook the GT up to it, or you hook the Batterskull that's laying around up to it. Sees play in all manner of Hate Bears decks. It's just it dodges a ton of removal. It gets lightning bolted, but it also doesn't get abrupt decayed. It can't get chumped. It can't get chumped by little green idiots.
It can't be blocked by Tarmogoyf.
Or zombies.
I can't tell you how many times I've lost games to this when I have a literal row of zombies, and I'm like, well, cool. You'll just give it lifelink and okay.
Yeah.
Feels bad, man.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for playing. Mirror Crusader is a terrific mirror image of those. I would love to see more of those types of mirror image cards. I think those are really cool.
Yeah.
And super flavorful.
Matched pairs. Yeah. Which is a thing that we see a lot of with Knights in particular. Mm-hmm. We didn't reference the hand cycle or the hand pairing from Kamigawa, which was very popular during its day. Black hand and white hand were both popular cards. We didn't reference Order of Lightburr, Order of the White Shield. We referenced White Knight, but Black Knight is still hanging out there.
Knight of Stromgall,
those are a match pairing. Knight of Stromgall's another great one. Knight of the Ebon Legion. The Knights in Ebon Hand, yeah. And we did talk about Knight of Infamy a little bit, and Knight of Glory. But those match pairs of white and black, not to mention Blood Knight, are pretty common in the Knights. And so I'm glad to see at least that one make the top.
Blood Knight was definitely on my short list. I wrote it down, was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I love Blood Knight. I think it's awesome. Aaron, what's your number 2?
I gotta say, if we're gonna record this late I come home from work, I'm hungry. If we're gonna record this late at night, I need a snack. And do you know what a really great snack is when you're hungry? Cheerios. My number 2 is Pure Steel Paladin.
God.
So Pure Steel Paladin is 2 whites. You made it though. My number it's Pure Steel Paladin, 2 white, creature type human knight for 2 power, 2 toughness. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. What's wrong with that? What could you possibly do with this? Well, it also has Metalcraft. Equipment you control have equip 0 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. This is the backbone of the Cheerios deck, which sees play in Modern. The reasons why it's called Cheerios is because you play a bunch of crappy 0 mana artifacts like Cathar's Shield, Kite Shield, Spider Silk Net, Paradise Mantle, Bone Saw, and some Mox Opals if you want to spice it up a little bit. But basically, it's an artifact storm deck. And so you play a bunch of crappy artifacts, which allow you to draw a card. You get a good number of the way through your deck. And then you play a card called Retract for 1 blue, bounce all the artifacts back to your hand, do all over again, and you kill them with something like a Grape Shot. And so this is a card that occasionally sees play in Modern. It always catches people off guard. It's very, very hard to deal with. Turn 2 kills are not uncommon with this deck. It's always just groan-inducing. But, when I think of on-brand things, as much as I hate to face it, it's busted as hell, which I got to give respect to. And so I just figured we couldn't let the night go by without some Cheerios.
This also, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that this is still seeing play as recent as a few weeks ago. This was part of the Star City Games Classic in Philadelphia. It won, or it was part of, the winning team in the Team Open in July. So it is still seeing play to this very day. This thing can be scary.
Yeah.
Unless we forget, it did win a Pro Tour in the hands of David Sharfman at Pro Tour Nagoya 2011, where didn't even have any of those free, a quarter shield kind of artifacts in them. Just had Flare Husks, Mortar Pods, and Swords of War and Peace to just get value off of the equipment that you had in your deck. This was my number 10. This was the only higher that I had on my list.
Nice. As we've gone over many times before, when it's free, it's scary and usually breaks, which is unfortunate. All right, let's turn the corner here to number 1. Aaron, what is your number 1?
I actually share my number 1 with somebody. So which one of you lucky gentlemen is it?
I think we share all together our number 1s.
Everyone shares number 1.
I'm not the third wheel anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, this was a pretty obvious number 1.
It felt pretty obvious. But
yeah, I mean, you can't deny this card. I mean, the power level of this card, the flavor of this card. I mean, we'll just never see anything like it again. I mean, it has tournament pedigree. It has competitive casual pedigree. I mean, our number one's Knight of the Reliquary. Like, what else? What else? So Knight of the Reliquary was originally printed in Conflux. It's one colorless, a green and a white for a 2/2 creature, human knight. Knight of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each land card in your graveyard. I'm listening. But what if you don't have any land cards in your graveyard? Are you gonna what are you gonna do? How are you gonna get them lands in there? Ruben, tell them.
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to activate Knight of the Reliquary, because when you tap it and sacrifice a forest or a plains, you can search your library for any land, put it into play, and then shuffle your library. So you can sacrifice not just a basic forest, not just a basic plains, but any forest or plains. So things like your temple gardens and your savannas also function. And then you go get any land. You can go get a fetch land to go get another savanna.
You can go get a Bajuka Bog.
You can go get a Bojuka Bog.
Caracas.
Maze of Ith, Glacial Chasm. I've seen some crazy lands that you can go get, which
Thespian Stage.
Thespian Stage or Dark Depths.
There was a deck in Modern for a minute that was using Retreat to Coral Helm.
Sure, yeah.
And so you would tap all their stuff down and then attack with a ginormous Knight of the Reliquary. Like, it's a win condition, it's a tutor, it feeds itself. It's ridiculous. And somehow it's only like a $3 card. Like,
they've reprinted it too many times.
Yeah, they've reprinted it a bunch.
Maverick and Legacy, this is a staple. Sometime, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, Knight of the Reliquary is the centerpiece of the Maverick deck alongside Mother of Runes. Basically, you just make a 10/10 of this and then just go to town eventually.
You know, when you're making Magic content back in the days of Conflux, and you try to tell people, hey, this card is amazing, seriously, this card's ridiculous, when, you know, you have one too many time reversals and one too many Warren Instigators, people weren't really paying enough attention, where everyone was like, hello, this card is nuts, this card is absolutely ridiculous. And it only took it, you know, showing up in top 8s before people finally said, hey, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's kind of common to have a card be a 4 of in a Pro Tour winning deck. It's not as common for the Pro Tour winning deck and the second place deck from that tournament to both feature 4 copies of a card. And that's exactly what happened with Knight of the Reliquary when Kibler won with Naya at Pro Tour Austin. So, you know, in addition to all of the accolades, in addition to it still seeing play in cubes, in addition to it still seeing play in older formats, it was just kind of an obvious pick, I think. Yep, and it was, and I was right there next to Kibler as he was winning the championship himself. Also with Kibler, when we were stopped by the police because somebody in the back seat didn't have their seatbelt on.
Oh boy!
And they were not cool with that.
What a stickler!
And we're just like, Kibler's there with like his giant trophy, and I'm there with like my camera and stuff. Right. And they're like, you know, what are y'all doing here? And we're just like trying to explain.
That doesn't sound like very knightly behavior to me.
It wasn't as knightly as the Knight of Reliquary. And that said, that is our top 10 knights. You'll see them on screen right now for our review. Please take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10. We want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to Cool Stuff.
There's some good ones still hanging out there. We had too many sames for us to use all the good ones. So I'm excited to see what the new comments are going to be.
But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Nighty night. Just it, night. Just night.
Yeah, that's where I was going to head too.
Well, the night is still young, Ruben. There's plenty of time.
True.
That's true.
Goodness gracious. Thank you, Ruben.
Y'all have a good night. All right, I'll see y'all later.
All right. Big night. Moving on to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching or listening, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify, or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.